it opened up to a window where Zoom is telling me it's setting the meeting up for this custom streaming service. Here we go. Okay. Okay, here we go. Coming back to you. Well, welcome, Kim. I'm so glad you're here and that you took the time at this busy time of year to spend some time with us, with me, and the listeners to talk about what you do and the importance of your work in the world, and especially at this holiday season.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to come on. I'm Kim Gross. I am the host of the podcast Masks Off for people pleasers and perfectionists. And I help people pleasers and perfectionists to, I always say it like this, to go from a people pleasing and perfectionistic prison to paradise. And the prison is the prison of the mind. And I've created a process, a repeatable process that I use for myself and others to go from that prison to paradise. And we can talk more about what the prison looks like for both, and also what does paradise look like, especially around this time of the year. Oh my gosh.
That's great. That sounds great. I'm so grateful that there's a process for that because it's kind of rampant in the world. What could you just define for us what perfectionism is and what people pleasing is? I know people maybe think they know what it is, but you're the expert in the field. Why don't you give us a nice focused definition for both of those terms?
So the best way for me to have listeners understand the nuances or what it means to show up as either a people pleaser or a perfectionist is to describe some of the behaviors and some of the tendencies. So I'll start with the perfectionist prison. A perfectionist will often put so much internal pressure on oneself to get it right, to get it right all at once. There is no learning curve for a perfectionist. If you're going to start on a new adventure, like creating a new business, and you have perfectionistic tendencies, you're going to put this undue pressure on yourself that you're supposed to get it all right, all at once, like this, with no mistakes, no learning curve. It's called a fixed mindset. And then what will happen is that the perfectionist will go into all or nothing. So they try to do it all and they're trying to do everything and they're super confident. They're high achievers, overachievers. They're either in that all category or then they go into the nothing category. And so maybe they're a big procrastinator. If there's something that feels challenging, feels overwhelming, then the person that has that tendency will procrastinate, put it off. Or as I like to say, because this was me for a long time, I would be so quick out of the gate, like horses, right? Like, whoa, take off. And I'm going. And then I would start hitting roadblocks or something that was challenging, something that was difficult. And then little by little, I started to just pull back, not do it because I didn't feel I could do it perfectly. So then I would go into not doing it, that all or nothing mindset. The other thing for a perfectionist that goes along with what I was just describing is there's this fear that if I can't do it perfectly, that I'm not even going to step outside my comfort zone. A lot of times there's so many things that we want to do or think things that we want to do, and then we don't step outside of our comfort zone because if we can't do it perfectly, or we compare ourselves to someone who may have been doing it for 10 or 12 or 15 years and say, I'm supposed to be just like that person, or I'm not like that person, so then I can't do it. I won't do it. And then the perfectionist will continue to play small. That's a nuance of the perfectionist, by the way, that most people would not think is a tendency or a behavior. Most of the time when we think about perfectionists, we think about people who have to have their house look just so, and their hair and their makeup and their clothes have to be just right and look a certain way. And while that is true for a perfectionist as well, there are many other nuances. So that's the perfectionist.
Okay.
People pleaser like Christmas time, holiday time. Oh my God. People pleasers out there are probably exhausted,
Yeah, right.
overwhelmed, resentful,
Mm,
bitter, anxious, and depressed. Why do I say that?
wow.
Because the people pleaser has the tendency or the characteristic or behavior pattern to put other people ahead of oneself. So if I'm having these people pleasing tendencies, I'm running around doing this for this person or that person, or even on like Christmas Day, I might be like a jackrabbit, or like a bouncing person up now. What do you need? What do you need? Are you okay? Do you need anything? Like constantly on my feet, surveying the room, taking the temperature of the room at all times, making sure that everyone is okay and that no one is upset with me. Because the people pleaser cannot tolerate the discomfort of having another person be upset with one. So,
Okay. Can I just stop
yeah,
right
yeah,
there?
go, go.
My brother is an etiquette specialist. He's known as the etiquette guy in at the Canada's etiquette guy. And I'm listening very carefully. And the question that came up, and you just answered it, was, well, what's the difference between a people pleaser and a good host? And you answered it by saying, worried about whether everybody's going to like me as the host, right? Instead of making sure everybody else is comfortable, right, and has a safe space. A big difference there. You want to put a little fine tuning on that?
Sure. So there's such a fear of rejection or abandonment for the people pleaser. That's the core wound. Underneath the people pleasing is this wounding that if I don't please my mom, my dad, my caretaker, whoever, if I'm not pleasing that person, that there may be a really good chance that mom or dad is going to withdraw their love from me. They're going to reject me. They're going to abandon me. And then I'm going to be all alone. It's our survival brain that is kicking in. And so now we're grown adults and we're still playing out that pattern, that wounding from childhood of making sure that everyone in the room is happy with me or pleased with me.
Okay. So a host, how is it different from a host or
Yeah.
a hostess
Okay.
who's got a very similar role, but it's like just a
Yeah.
healthy way? How do you do
I
that?
love that because I love that question because I was even thinking about it from the lens of buying gifts at Christmas time.
Mhm.
So there was a time when I, no lie, was buying gifts for 27 people, and it was 2 or 3 or 4 gifts per person. It was not unheard of for me to be wrapping like 100 presents. One could argue and say, if I'm giving a gift to the postman, I'm giving a gift to my hairdresser, to my kids' teachers. Oh, well, isn't that just a kind and thoughtful thing to do?
Mhm.
Yes, it is a kind and thoughtful thing if it's coming from the place of my heart wanting to do
Mhm.
that. I
Mhm.
want to give to that person because I'm so grateful that this person is in my life. I'm so grateful. I love my postman. I see him all the time. He talks to me, and I just want to show him my appreciation. Versus if I don't give a gift to every one of my kids' teachers and I'm the only one who isn't, and I look bad because I didn't give a gift, or I have to give a gift to this one, because if I don't give a gift to my mother-in-law, like, oh boy, she might be so upset with me and so displeased. And not only am I people pleasing when I do that, but I'm also being the perfect little girl doing all the right things. So that's where there sometimes is this overlap with people pleasing and perfectionism. A people pleaser is trying to be the perfect person, do all the right things, say all the right things at all times.
And it's coming from a place of fear rather than a place of just an open heart. So
A
very
hundred
different
percent.
energies, right?
It comes from lack, it comes from wounding, and it does not come from that open-hearted space, like I said, of just generosity. So going back to your example of being a good host, if I genuinely love having people at my house and I'm hosting a party and I love to converse and chit chat, and I love to make sure people are having a good time and they're feeling welcomed and they feel comfortable at my home, that's coming from a different space than, oh, if I don't make sure that everyone is happy and all their needs are being met all at once so that they can go back and tell their friends, oh my God, Kim was such a great host. You should have seen her party. Or like, or not say, oh my God, Kim was a terrible host. I'll never go to her house again. There's a difference in the energy.
Absolutely a difference. Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting. So tell me one more. I'm just going to have another question around nuance and this time of year and family and stuff that comes up.
Yeah.
What about the part of people pleasing and or perfectionism about wanting to fix others? Even when they're not asking for help, you're this wanting to fix, right? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Okay, so yeah, as a person who wore the fixer mask or fix it mask, felt I feel like fixing and rescuing go hand in hand. So the rescuer and the fixer.
Mhm.
And ultimately, what it comes down to is not being able to be okay with the present moment, being in resistance to the as is. I actually just listened to someone do a TikTok earlier on the angst that we cause ourselves when we don't accept our reality, when we want other people to be other than what they are. So
Mhm.
we try to control, we try to overmanage, and even go into so much as, oh, are you okay? Do you need anything? Like just trying to make them really happy and okay to avoid, especially if the person that, let's say there's a person, a spouse, a parent, a mother-in-law, whatever, that tends to have can be explosive,
Mhm.
over emotional, that eggshell environment that we talked about, walking on eggshells. You never know if they're going to explode or get pissed off by something you say or do at Christmas. And so you are constantly trying to make sure they're okay
Mhm.
and that they're not going to get upset or angry and have an outburst. So I think in that way, you're trying to manage them, thus, you're trying to fix them.
Mhm.
And again, it comes from that childhood wounding of walking on eggshells and never knowing if the person, whether it was your mom or your dad or whoever is taking care of you, was going to flip a switch on you and then all of a sudden shame you, put you down, yell at you, how dare you, not meet your needs. A lot of people pleasers, most people pleasers, would probably be able to venture out and say that when they were a child, their emotional needs and sometimes physical needs were not met. Their
Mhm.
emotional needs were not met. They were not important. The caregivers weren't able to show up emotionally for the child. And so the messaging, the way that that child interprets it is, I'm not worthy enough. to have my needs met. So therefore, I'm not going to have any. I'm going to deny them. I'm going to push them down. I'm going to suppress it. And I'm just going to make sure everyone else is okay. I'm just going to focus outward on others. Another trait of the people pleaser is focusing out instead of in.
Yes, and from the trauma point of view, would you would you say that fawning and appeasement would qualify as under the people pleasing and perfection? Well, I don't know about the perfectionist, but it's the fawning and appeasement, this constant trying to manipulate
Yeah.
my behavior to make sure that their behavior is like okay, right?
A
That kind.
100%. A
So it's a
hundred
trauma
percent.
response. It's a response to unresolved trauma. It's a
Yep.
strategy. Like I want people to understand, and I'm sure you say this with your clients, that it's a strategy to keep us safe. It's like there's nothing wrong with us. We came up with this solution
Yeah.
to living our life, and we just need to it's kind of not serving us anymore, and we need to shift into something healthier, which you could just because it's exhausting. You can't
Oh,
sustain it.
it
You know,
is so exhausting. And that's
it
why
creates
we end up
chronic
with
stress.
disease.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
Yes. And disease. See, we're thinking the same way. 100%. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because I do want people to understand that it's not a shameful thing to acknowledge and admit that you have people pleasing or perfectionistic tendencies. Oftentimes, a people pleaser is associated with being a doormat, being weak, being too sensitive, too vulnerable, all these negative connotations. But what you're saying, and you just said is so important, is that as children, we, in our brilliant minds, came up with this way of protecting ourselves. So I talk about masks off because that's my podcast. Any mask that we wear is in an effort to protect ourselves.
Hmm.
Problem is that as we become adults, as you just said, it's so exhausting. Think about every one of those masks weighing 15 or 20 pounds. It's exhausting to carry that around. And we don't need them anymore because we are adults now, but we're still playing out that pattern. We're living out a pattern, not a life.
Mm. Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful description. How do you move from that? And it's really a frequency. It's kind of an energetic, the nervous system for sure. At the nervous system level, it's like on all the time, right? It's like a stress response stuck in the on position. It's always on, right? Never getting a rest. How do you move from the people always people pleasing, trying to fix, be perfect? How do you move from that to um, this other place that you talked about? You
The
take people
paradise.
journey, paradise.
Yeah,
That's
the
right. Yeah,
paradise,
yeah.
prison of
How do you?
paradise. Yeah, great question. So this is my 5-step power pathway that I created. Power, Power. So P is the very first thing is to be able to recognize these patterns. If you don't recognize that you have these patterns and how you play them out, you won't be able to change a thing. Nothing will change. So that's why when I do my podcast, I do my TikTok videos, I work with clients, I really go into the nuances of how these patterns show up so that people can identify and say, oh, yeah, I do that. I do that too. I do that. I do that. I do that. So then they know, okay, now they can become aware of the pattern. First step. The second step is O, which is own your shit. And what that means is that we have to be able to move out of this place of victimhood. So, yes, there may be people in your life that are jerks or they're shitheads or whatever. That may be very true. How you respond to what is happening and what you do next is on you, right? serenity prayer from 12 steps. I cannot control people, places, and things. The only thing I can control is me. And when you can get into that space and know that the onus, the responsibility is on you to do the inner work, to do the healing, to heal the pattern so that you can show up differently, is on you and you alone. No one else is going to do it for you. And not only that, if you're waiting, wishing, and hoping for everyone else to change, good luck with that, because that's not going to happen either. So it's about owning. It's about owning your shit and being able to take responsibility. Then the real work comes in. The real work with W and E is W is the willingness to feel in order to heal. And E is learning to embrace your inner child, to reparent your inner child, and to embrace your shadow parts. If you're not able to go from the head, the mind, down into the heart to heal that part and to come into wholeness and reconnect those parts, you are going to stay stuck in that trauma response that you talked about. And once you do the healing and you're able to now come more into wholeness and you're able to see the patterns and own it, and you, when you're triggered, you can feel, you can go in, all right, let me feel this. This feels like fear. It feels sad. It feels angry, whatever it is, feeling it in your body, because the saying is true. The body keeps the score. So it's all held in the body. And being able to either work with a coach or a therapist, have someone help you with some somatic healing, just learning how to really release this energy. Now, mind you, it's not as simple as 1, 2, 3. It's a repeatable process that you have to do like over and over, and it's not going to happen overnight. It took a long time for the trauma to get there. It's going to take time for the healing to happen. And then finally, for the last step, the R is taking radical responsibility. And then that's where I help people to do practical things like, okay, a people pleaser has a really hard time setting boundaries. So I teach them how to set boundaries, practice setting a boundary that you can keep. And that's going to be really important for the holiday season. We can talk about that if you want in a minute, like how people can set some boundaries around the holidays. And learning how to, this one is so important, learning how to have conscious communication. And the reason that I include that one in the process is because a people pleaser will often have very unfulfilling relationships. Why is that? Because they're so one-sided. If the people pleaser is constantly other focused and giving all of her energy to the other, and it's not a give and take, a give and receive, and she's not receiving, she's not filling her cup, she's going to feel resentful. And why can't you see what I need? Why can't you meet my needs? And I'm giving everything to you. What are you giving to me? And there's this lack of balance, and there's a lack of wholeness because she's coming from a place of woundedness, from lack, not from abundance. So the relationships in her life or his life are more than likely going to be unfulfilling. So I teach this skill of conscious communication and how one can communicate with another to have more of her needs met, and how to express and how to ask for. A people pleaser has the hardest time speaking up and saying what she needs and what she wants. She's so used to that being denied that it's so hard to just speak up and say what I want and need.
I can remember a time when I didn't even know what my needs were. If you'd asked me the question, I would have gone,
I don't know.
I don't know. or I mean, it just, here's another thing I'd like to just drop into for the women. I don't know so much about the men, although my brother was kind of put into service too. As soon as I could walk, literally, I was put into service helping others. That was the focus. And my brother was to a certain extent, but I focused sort of differently. And I remember that was the pattern, the behavior, the programming that I just absorbed it. This is how this is how I stay safe in this world, kind of thing. And I remember when I first kind of got in really early in recovery, um, I was kind of used to being the peacemaker between two people in my family. And there was kind of a thing, I was not there, but I knew there was a problem between the two of them. And I talked to my counselor and I said, I've got to I'm the peacemaker. I've got to be there. And she said, no, you don't. And I said, yeah, I do. I actually do. And she said, no, they can handle it all by themselves. And I was like, it never occurred to me that was new for me. And it was such a pattern, right? And then it was like, oh, I'm supposed to focus on me first. Now that was a huge shift for me because my whole life I'd been focused on other, and I got whatever was left over energy. Anything that was left over was like I was fine with that, which again is not sustainable. Not surprising, I ended up being a chronic pain sufferer, right? But that took a huge it just rocked my world when I made that shift. It just never occurred to me because it's not the way that's not the way I took the programming in, very unconsciously, obviously. And it's the way I perceived my world was that's what women did. It's what it's what the women around me did. So um it's been, and of course all of them had all kinds of irritable bowel, and they had all kinds of like chronic
Yeah.
conditions, and alcoholism,
Mm.
all kinds of things. So it's exciting to me to see the women today, getting a faster grip on shifting. I fill my cup first and everybody else gets the overflow. That's great. It took me a while to learn that.
And I bet it was super uncomfortable in the beginning.
It
Yeah.
was, but it was also a relief. It was also
Yeah.
great. I could take the weight of all this off my shoulders. It's not
Yep.
really mine. So
And start
yes,
taking care of yourself.
yeah.
And self-care is usually lacking for someone who is in the throes of people-pleasing tendencies. And for me, I was forced into developing a self-care plan because when I was 33, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, and my kids were 5 and 2 at the time.
Oof.
And I knew that if I wanted to be able to show up for them and take care of them, I was going to have to start to put myself first, that proverbial put your oxygen mask on first before assisting others. And it took a long time to get really good at that. And I'll be honest and say there are even still times where I know when they were in their teenage years, it was just so knee jerk, the reaction to just say yes right away to any request that they would give to me.
Mhm.
And I would say, yep, okay, sure. Yep, you want me to do that? Oh, okay. And not think about myself. I actually shared a story once on a video that I was so keenly aware on a family vacation, this one family vacation. We were in Florida and it was the four of us. And I can remember each day saying and thinking to myself, okay, to my son, okay, what do you want to do today? And then my daughter, what do you want? What do you need? My husband, what do you want? What do you need? And like just trying to constantly
Mm.
bend and mold to what they wanted to do the entire vacation. I don't know if I even once, maybe I worked out a little bit, but I don't really know that I stopped once to say, Kim, what do you want to do on this vacation?
Mhm.
What would make you feel recharged, relaxed, rejuvenated, joyful? And I can tell you that I'm going to guess, I don't remember, but I bet you I put on 5 to 8 pounds that week because then it's this with the food because I'm trying to numb something.
Hmm.
I'm numbing the fact that I am self-abandoning. I was self-abandoning every day of that vacation and putting others ahead of myself. And then the only way to really kind of take away that pain is to numb it. And I would numb it with food.
Oh, that's a strategy.
Yes.
That's a,
Not a healthy
that's a
one, but
strategy, all right. Yeah. It's 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 interesting because your journey is actually very similar to mine with my clients and in my own healing, which is you're taking a stress response that's stuck in the on position and you're bringing it back to balance so that it can come on and off appropriately and not get stuck like that. And that takes well, that's an interesting journey. Everybody's a little bit different, but everybody's got the same neurophysiology, so you've got
yes.
that to work with, right?
Yes, and then when you're able to get out of that stuck position and your body is able to self-regulate and your body's able to relax, then your body's able to heal. Your body
Mhm.
knows what it's supposed to do. And so, I still have the autoimmune disease, but I'm on no medication for it and still have some chronic pain, but not compared to where I was when I was first diagnosed 18 years ago. I am light years away from where I was. And then to talk more about the paradise and what's possible when you do this work and you start to heal and you start to come into wholeness with that wounded part of you is looking outside and all of a sudden the sky looks bluer. The trees look more vibrant. The grass is greener. You have more joy. You have more freedom. Talk about the freedom that you said you felt when you realized, oh my goodness, I don't have to take care of this one. I don't have to be the peacemaker for these two. This isn't my responsibility. My only responsibility is to me. And there's such a freedom in that. And then you start to feel more empowered when you're coming into wholeness and that unworthiness, that not enoughness is starting to become healed. Now, all of a sudden, the perfectionist is like, okay, I can have more grace, more compassion for myself when I don't learn something right away, or I make a mistake, or I mess up, or it's taking me a while, or I can't figure this out. It's like more grace, more compassion. Your heart starts to open up more and wider. And now you're starting to relate with other adults from a place of equanimity and wholeness rather than this hierarchical position where one is up and one is down. And you just feel life is so much different from this space.
I love that. I love that. And that's the second time you said something about comparing. And I'm just going to share my tidbit on that.
Mm,
The only way to win at the comparison game is to stop playing.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big one. That just came right off my tongue. But to
yeah,
actually implement that is when you're used to this, it's a judgment and all that. Um,
yeah. Brene
yeah.
Brown
Oh,
says all the time that comparison is the thief of joy.
yeah. There you go. And combined with that is don't complain, relent
Mm,
complaint.
mm,
So, you know, stop comparing, don't complain because that complaining, this comparison thing brings in resentments. It fosters resentment, and then we start complaining, right? And we slip out of the frequency of gratitude, which is the abundance, where the abundance is, right?
yeah.
So
And
we
not
have
only that, but it keeps you in victimhood. If you're complaining, it keeps you in victimhood and you're in resistance to the as is. You're in
that's right.
resistance to the reality. So therefore, you're not in the present moment because you're wishing that something was different. You want it to be more something in the future or you wanting the past to change. Neither are going to happen and you're not in the present moment.
Yeah, and you're still having an argument with the present moment. Right. Okay.
I love that. I have never heard that said before. I love that you're having an argument with the present moment. So true, Elizabeth. I love that.
Oh yeah. Well, that's me in a nutshell. That
Yes. Oh my
I
gosh.
had to learn how to I still, that became such a really such a habit. I was really grateful for ancestral clearing, which this is an old habit. It's not just in my ancestral clearing works in the past, but it also works in the lineage part of the past. That was helpful for this, but yoga was helpful for this, and then also being in safe community where we were able to kind of share about, I don't even know what a boundary is. Can you show me? Right. And getting in safe community where we can kind of try, which is what I like about 12-step and kind of
Yeah.
recovery type communities, that are kind of, some of them are really focused on this codependent behavior. And that's a place where we can, we can go into we can go into the lab and we can try this. We can try, oh, what happens if I take this mask off? Am I going to be safe? And, ooh, can I take this one off? Right.
Yeah.
Like that. But for me, it was very helpful to be in safe community with other people that were doing this kind of work, so that I knew that if I made a misstep and didn't do it right, that it was okay. At this point in my life, I'm kind of, my prayer in the morning is, because as recovering perfectionist, recovering overachiever, recovering people pleaser. Um, at this point in my life, my part of my prayer in the morning is, because I know I'm going to make a mistake, is, please help me, my mistakes not hurt anyone else or me,
Mm.
me or anyone else. Right. Let's just, can we just, I know mistakes are going to happen, and let's just, hopefully they won't hurt anybody. That's my prayer.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? And I want to just piggyback on that too, because again, you just underlined or highlighted the fact that a perfectionist really struggles to make mistakes, right? Just by nature, a perfectionist has to do everything perfectly. So making a mistake is really, really hard. And one of the things that really shifted for me was when I started to look at things from a lens of how is this here to help me? How can I grow from this? Because for me, one of my core values is personal growth. My soul wants to grow and evolve. I can just feel that. There's a knowing for that. So if I look at every situation and everything that I do and say, how is that there to help me grow and evolve? I'm coming from a place of abundance. Whereas before I was in recovery, what you said early on was I would complain about everything that anyone did or that I was doing. And I was constantly in a state of victimhood. I was the victim because everything was happening to me. But as I started to shift that mindset, now I'm coming from a place of abundance.
Mhm. Yeah, that changes everything,
It
really.
so does.
Can you share with us maybe your top five suggestions for helping people get through the holidays, um, without people pleasing and being in that perfectionist mode? Like, people like, this is the perfect gift, and then maybe it isn't. Like all that stuff that happens.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love it. Well, first of all, I will even start by saying one of the slogans from 12 step rooms is progress, not perfection. So the reason for that is that the progress is the gray area. It takes you out of that black or white, all or nothing. So the first thing I would say to anyone who is listening is to not put an expectation on yourself to do this perfectly this holiday season. Start out small. Start out with something small. So maybe it can be as simple as and maybe this isn't simple. This was really hard for me in the beginning. Now in hindsight, it was like, okay, I'm so glad that I did it. Maybe you just make one small boundary of this year, I'm not sending out Christmas cards because you don't like sending out Christmas cards. It feels like a pressure. It feels like you're exhausted from it. It's a time suck. It just drains you. Something small that you can start out by doing. And that's a boundary. You're setting a boundary. I'm not doing Christmas cards anymore. Maybe, there's certain people that are really close to you that you used to send a card to, and you can send them a text or something if you wanted to. The idea is for this holiday season is to tap more into what is an authentic yes and what's an authentic no. So if you really want to say no to something, but you're saying yes because you're pleasing, that's an indicator of like, okay, where can I say no? Maybe this year I'm not going to make 10 batches of cookies. Maybe I'm only going to make 2. That's a boundary, and it's also becoming more of an authentic no. Like, no, I'm not going to spend my time making 10 batches of cookies. Or this year, I'm not going to participate in the cookie exchange. That one was like for me, because my mother used to get really upset if I didn't come to the family cookie exchange. There's so much guilt. I have so much guilt around cookie exchanges, but I just didn't. I don't like to bake. I don't want to bake. I didn't want to bring cookies. I just didn't want anything to do with it, and had the hardest time setting that boundary. Eventually I did. And, if you're the type of person as a perfectionist, you're trying to make your house be perfectly perfect. You're picking it up. Everything has to be put away. Everything has to look just right. You have to have the candles going and the music playing, and everything just has take the pressure off yourself a little bit. If it's not completely picked up, okay, so be it. Honest and truly, the people who are coming to your home are not going to care if you still have some clutter on the countertop. They're not going to say, oh my God, that was the worst Christmas or the worst party I've ever gone to, because you should have seen the clutter on her counter. It's not going to happen. So just like, where is there just a little window, a little small window of where you can take some pressure off yourself to have to be perfect this holiday season? Where can you say yes? Where can you say yes to something that you would like to do?
Great.
Right? Maybe it is like you want, instead of having ham, because everyone wants ham and you don't like ham, you hate ham, maybe you make yourself a fish dinner while everyone else has the ham. Or you just say, we're having fish this year, not ham, because that's what I feel like having. So saying yes to yourself is another way of helping the people pleaser too.
Beautiful. What a
I don't know
beautiful.
if that was 5, but that was definitely a few examples.
That's a great list. I think I'll just add a couple because I made I've had been involved in like, a list for how to stay sober for the holidays, which this qualifies for that because we're trying to, this is called emotional sobriety, right? So have an exit plan. That's an exercise in boundaries.
Yes.
Right? If you get tired or you feel pressured and you feel like you need a break, take a break.
Yeah.
Right. Have a buddy. If you're going to an event, have a friend, take a friend. Use your phone. Right.
Take your own car. If you're going to like another
That's right.
family member's house and you normally go with your spouse and you feel like you're going to be stuck, drive yourself, because then you can leave if you need to leave.
That's right. And I think the thing that would be helpful, because you started your process with awareness, right?
Yeah.
Is be aware of the energy that you're feeling. Like, right, we have to own our stuff, but let's be aware of the energy that we're feeling, our reaction to uh, what we're perceiving, the meaning that we're making of what's happening in front of us. And if we start feeling overwhelmed, remember to breathe,
Yeah.
find somebody who's safe that you can maybe co-regulate with, that'll help you kind of calm down. If something happens and you feel like you get actually overwhelmed by something, maybe triggered that trigger word, definitely find a safe person. Don't
Yeah.
be alone with that. Don't be alone with that. Whatever that negativity you're feeling is, don't be alone with that. Find somebody who's safe and sit down and feel it right in safety. Yeah.
I love that. There was a time when I used to, in the holidays, just be a ball full of nerves. I was so unaware of my body because I was like cut off from like the neck and I wasn't even aware. So what you're saying is beautiful is before you even have the people over, you go to the other person's house, like just check in with your body. Like, is your body relaxed or, are your shoulders tense? Is your neck tense right from the start? Or maybe even every single day throughout the whole holiday season, because there's the shopping and there's this and there's that. Is your mind causing your body to just feel so tight and tense because you're thinking of all the things that you have to do all the time. And God forbid you don't get the list done perfectly as a perfectionist.
Yeah,
Check,
right.
check, check, check. Like there's, endorphin hits by checking off the list. Like, it's okay. It's okay. I'm saying preaching to the choir when I say that it is okay to let the list go and just
Mhm.
really check in with your body. And the other thing that you could do if you have children or kids that are at the family functions, like younger ones, and the adults are being kind of crazy or like, unhealthy or toxic, go
Mhm.
play with the kids, be with the kids, right? Because their energy is going to be a whole lot different. Sit at the kids' table, go play. Just another little tool.
I love that. I love that. Well, gosh, Kim, thank you so much for spending time with us today
Yeah.
and helping us kind of get a real bead on the perfectionist, the people pleasing, and kind of what to look for and how to shift those things. Uh, ways to gently begin to nudge yourself in a healthier direction. And for the great tips for the holiday, do you have any last words that you want to share with us? And then I want you to let everybody know how they can find you.
Yeah. So I do say this all the time and it's on repeat, but it's worth repeating because I feel it's so profound. Is that I say to myself and I say to others, the last thing that I want for myself or for other people is to be on my deathbed and to look back and have the regret that I didn't show up fully, that I didn't show up in the world as my true self.
Mhm.
I walk through the world with masks on. I don't want to have that regret. I want to be able to say I was able to take off the masks and be my true authentic self. And that's my wish and my hope for everyone in the world.
Beautiful. I love that. Wow. Okay. Well, you just underlined the whole the whole thing with a great thing for us to focus on. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best place is my website, kimgrosscoaching.com. I do have a people pleaser and perfectionist quiz on my website. It's really fun to take. It's short, it's not super long, gives you some information. On my website is where all my socials are. It's where my podcast is. So that's why it's a one-stop shop because everything is right there. Also on my website is that list of the perfectionistic, the prison that I talked about in the beginning, the perfectionistic prison and the people pleasing prison, and then what is possible for the paradise for both. And that's on the front page. And also my 5-step power pathway graphic is on my website too. So that's the best location.
Okay, so I'll make sure to put your the link to your website in the comment section once we're done here, and so everybody can find you. And thank you again for spending time with us. It's just some of these things are hard won, and my experience is that the best teachers are the ones that have actually been through it and have healed themselves, because they kind of know all the different like things, all the different ways of all the different resistance points,
Totally.
challenges on the way to, oh, I got to take this mask off. Oh, what's it going to do to take this mask off? Uh-oh, I got to take this one off next. Right. That.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anybody that's looking for for help around people pleasing or healing perfectionism, which are again strategies to keep us safe to begin with, but really create chronic stress when they're used over and over and over, and it's exhausting and really can lead to dis-ease. So please look to Kim. She's the expert in this area if you need help with this. And thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you so much for having me, Elizabeth.
All right. Take care. Thank you so much.